the Isle of Wight Council and I, working together, are putting in what we believe is a very strong bid for a development in East Cowes, and I'm very keen I'm very keen that it reaches receptive ears in the government and with ministers. Secondly, I'd like to more broadly perhaps talk about the levelling up agenda for the island and to ask the government to work with us, even to use the island as a model, a mini region if you like, to see what a strategic cross-government agenda can look like. And on that point, I think one of the things I'm most concerned to talk, Mr. Chairman, with the Minister about is the extent to which the Treasury is leading cross-government work rather than the Cabinet Office, and how we are developing cross-government, coherent, integrated policy making. However, if there is one critical element that I want to leave with the Minister today, it is that the levelling up agenda for the Isle of Wight implies many things. Not only economic development, as important as that is, but also training and skills, and critically education, health outcomes, but greater environmental protection, so housing and planning as well. Effectively, what we want is a strategic roadmap for the next 50 years, which has more to offer the island than we have had in the past 50 years. Levelling up, Mr. Speaker, seems a fancy word for regional policy, for taking wealth or taking economic development out of the southeast and trying to spread it around the country as much as possible. And indeed, according to the IFS, we are one of the most unequal countries in the G7 developed nations, which is pretty scandalous. And specifically on the island, Mr. Speaker, we have for nearly 2 decades been making the case for a more assertive regional assistance programme. In 2002, our GDP, our local economy, was 60% of that in the southeast. Things have improved in the last decade and a half, 2 decades, and it's now 66%. But we are poorer than elsewhere in the southeast. Our educational achievements are lower, our health outcomes are worse. The island has a unique identity, which those of us who live on the island are incredibly proud of and frankly love. But there is a downside, the economic impact of dislocation and diseconomies of scale specific to an island. But if you go to other areas of the UK, people can be physical islands cut off, as we've seen from folks in Hartlepool and other areas, which is why the levelling up agenda, which is why the attractiveness of that hopeful agenda post-Brexit, I think, has such a hold on many people, and rightly so. And what we have to do is to deliver on that agenda. The levelling up agenda done right is one of great hope and potential prosperity for this country. But done wrong, we will be letting down millions of people throughout the United Kingdom. I want to just make one other point now as well. According to all our statistics, Mr. Chairman, the Isle of Wight should be in Tier 1, and frankly should be 2 constituencies in Tier 1, because A, we are exactly double, my electorate is double the size of the average constituency in the United Kingdom, but also we are going to be 2 constituencies in 3 years' time after the Boundary Commission changes anyway. So I am slightly concerned that we are 1 constituency in Tier 2 at the moment, where I think our case merits a higher priority. And coming to our bid, the bid that's going in this week, Mr. Speaker, is in relation to a series of buildings at East Cowes that we wish to transform. And the purpose of this is to grow the number of high-paid jobs in marine, but also in tidal and wind and offshore renewable sectors. The bid that we are putting in will enable us to develop that cluster of excellence further and to ensure that East Cowes continues to grow as a shipbuilding, composites and green tech hub for the United Kingdom as a whole. I would welcome a ministerial visit to East Cowes. Prime Minister, before he became Prime Minister, actually visited during the campaign, and many people remember that picture that he had taken in front of the world's largest Union Jack on, where else, the Isle of Wight. But we would equally welcome another ministerial visit to see the excellent work that is being done there. But this is part of a wider agenda. And it's that wider agenda that I also want to turn to, because the Council's new. We're going to work very closely together. It's not Conservative Council any longer, which is a shame, but we're going to work very closely together, and I know we're going to have a successful relationship. The Council and I are not thinking about the next 2 to 5 years, Mr. Speaker, but the next 5 to 25 years, because we want to see a different future for the island. And that has to be around primarily regeneration of our town centres using the Levelling Up and Shared Prosperity Fund bids. Our regional approach, especially after COVID, is going to be focused, our regeneration approach, especially after COVID, will be focused primarily on Newport, a town centre which has frankly lots of empty shops, but also Newport Harbour, which is ripe as a development and regeneration hub. And as part of that, we want high-quality new house building for islanders in sensitive numbers to drive regeneration. We need to bring back young people and housing into the town centre to drive economic growth, but also to do other things, to provide employment for start-up companies, for leisure, for higher education facilities, which I'll come to in a sec, space for start-ups, and potentially a new railway station, depending on how the branch line rejuvenation or the branch line project goes. So if there's a single long-term item that I would interest the Minister in, it would be the regenerate after the East Cowes project. As a part of a longer-term goal, it would be the regeneration of Newport to drive the island's economy. But this is linked to many other things, as I'm sure the Minister can imagine. Education. We need to continue to develop higher education on the island. The education revolution that transformed Bournemouth and Brighton and Portsmouth and Southampton has completely passed us by, scandalously. 23% of islanders go into higher education, compared nearly to 40% of Londoners. That is unacceptable. Millions have been pledged by the Department of Education, and I thank the ministers for this, to help rebuild the Isle of Wight College. The Isle of Wight College, under Debbie Levine's excellent leadership, is doing great work, aligning with mainland colleges to be able to offer richer and better vocational courses, as well as degree courses as well. So we're getting there in higher education, but there is further and more that needs to be done. Regenerating our towns also means, Mr. Chairman, that we can protect our landscape much more. And we need our landscape, not only for our quality of life, but also because it is a critical part of our visitor economy. And our landscape has specific economic, as well as emotional and psychological value, over and above a competitive price for low-density greenfield housing. For 50 years, we have not built for islanders, and that needs to stop. And as part of any regeneration plan, any levelling up plan for the island, we need greater landscape protection, and we need a policy of building for islanders. So that does mean exceptional circumstance and preferably opting out of national targets. In fact, the best way that we think to give long-term protection to the island, depending on what happens with the government's landscape review, is for the island to have a new designation, a new template to work with government to become an island park. Now, that can be a marine protection, landscape protection, maybe up to AONB level, maybe with some opt-out for economic development. But we should work on a new template. And it can be a template for the UK. We can start in England, the Scilly Isles, the Isle of Wight, Wales, Anglesey, and there are many Scottish islands which could potentially benefit from a similar shared model, although I know Scotland has the Scottish Islands Needs Allowance, and I wish we'd had that in England. So there is more that we can be done, more that can be done. But what I'm trying to show here is that economic development and educational aspiration need to go hand in hand with other things to ensure that when we regenerate, we do so in an intelligent, sensitive, long-term way that develops our people and it gives them greater aspiration, greater hope for the future, greater education, greater work opportunities, but also whilst protecting our landscape, both for us, for our nation in perpetuity, but also as a critical part of our visitor economy. I'm aware of the time, and I will begin to wind up so others can start to come in the next couple of minutes. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I will be seeking separate debates on the progress of the island deal, which we've made some progress on, but we need to do more. And I would just stress there are additional costs of providing public services on an island which are not in dispute. I'm delighted that with the fair funding formula, which the now Chancellor championed, and I thank the Right Honourable Member for Richmond for his excellent work on this, there was an admittance that there were additional costs in providing public services, providing additional costs for local government services. That same argument is still being played out in the field of health, and specifically for the 12 universally small hospitals in England, of which St Mary's on the Isle of Wight is the most unique universally small hospital because it's on an island, and by definition it can't grow in any conceivable way, or the population is about half of what a district general hospital normally requires for the tariff regime which is currently operated within the NHS. I'll also have a separate debate on ferries, which is far too big a topic just for here, and also agriculture. But finally, just to leave, if I may, a single idea, again, in the mind of the Minister, that for us, regeneration, the levelling up, the shared prosperity regional agenda is about a lot of things. But fundamentally, it's about making sure that we have a better future than our past. It is focusing on the development of our folks and their education and their well-being and their health, but to do so sensitively, intelligently, whilst preserving our environment. And as I say, done right, levelling up can be transformative. And I'm very much hoping that I can work with the Minister on a coherent cross-government approach for the island in a way that can help us all nationally as well. Thank you.